Okay. We're good. Great. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, March the 5th, 2025, and the time is 6:04 p.m. On behalf of the West Hants Regional Municipality, I am pleased to call tonight's public information meeting to order. This evening's session is for a rezoning and development agreement for PIDs 4505-5241, 45190386, and 453-66457 Wentworth Road in Windsor. The planning member representing the file for these properties is Carrie Bouchier, Acting Director of Planning. My name is Jim Ivey, Councillor for Windsor South District 11, and I'll be your chair. To formally begin our session, West Hants Regional Municipality acknowledges that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and that this land is governed by the treaties of peace and friendship signed in 1726. The West Hants Regional Municipality recognizes that we are all treaty people and have responsibilities to this land and each other. The West Hants Regional Municipality also recognizes African Nova Scotians are a distinct people whose history, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kma'ki known as Nova Scotia for over 400 years. The West Hants Public Participation Program, established under Section 204 of the Municipal Government Act, requires a public information meeting for development agreements and proposed amendments to planning documents. This meeting is hosted by the planning and development staff and provides members of the public with an opportunity to bring up any concerns and ask the applicant and planning staff questions regarding the proposal. As a reminder, this meeting is streamed live on YouTube, and audience members are not permitted to record the meeting on their personal devices. Council and I, as chair, are committed to ensuring this meeting and its participants conduct themselves in a respectful manner while the meeting is being conducted. I thank you all in advance for your commitment to these important meeting principles. If we need to leave the building due to a fire or other emergency, exits are found to the right and the left at the back of the room as I face you. The muster location is in the staff parking lot in this direction. I'm going to ask Planner Dunphy, once again, you're my go-to person for this, that please be the last person out and to check that the washrooms are empty before leaving yourself. We'll now begin the formal part of this evening's session with an overview of the process and proposal from Acting Director Carrie Bouchier. Thank you. My apologies. I've positioned this as being Carrie Bouchier. It's Will Hong. My apologies, Will, for not having you in the intro.
Hey, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone here tonight and also who are watching online. My name is Will Hong, and I'm the planner with the West Hants Regional Municipality. I'm joined tonight with my colleague, Alex Dunphy, and he's the senior planner here. The agenda for tonight's public information meeting is outlined in this slide. Myself will go over a few slides talking about the municipal planning process and how public can share their feedback with us, and the applicant will also have the opportunities to present their slides as well. And then we'll open up the floor to the members of the public and have a conversation with anyone who wants to speak. I have my contacts here on the slides, and I also got my business card on the table over there. And I just want to highlight my contact information again at the end of my presentation. So tonight's meeting is about the planning application for PID number 45055-241, 45190-386, and 453-66457. Tonight is a public information meeting, which is generally the very first meeting that we hold through the planning process. So we are still in the early phase of the planning approval, and no decision has been made at this point. So this slide shows the background of the application. We received a complete application from Brighter Community Planning on behalf of J.D. Irving Limited on January 27 this year. And the application is to develop multiple commercial buildings on PID number 450555241 and part of the PID 451903A6 with plans to accommodate future residential development at the rear of the commercial area on the PID number 45190386. And so specifically, this application will be reviewed in three concurrent parts. The first part is an amendment to the maps of the Windsor Municipal Planning Strategy to allow Council to consider redesignate portion of PID number 450555241 and number 451903A6 to commercial. And the second part is the amendment to the maps of the Windsor Land Use Bylaw to allow Council to rezone the portion of 451903A6 from agriculture to Wentworth Road Commercial and 2-unit residential R2. And amend the Wentworth Road Gateway District boundary. And the final part is to consider the proposed commercial buildings by development agreement as per policy 8.6.15 of the Windsor Municipal Planning Strategy. So before moving on, I'd like to clarify a few points. So one of the subject lots, PID number 451903A6, is significantly large with almost 69 acres. And you will notice a dashed line appearing on the following maps, which represents the jurisdictional boundary between the Windsor and West Hands planning areas. So the areas to the left of the line falls within the Windsor, while the area to the right is part of the West Hands. And tonight's application is entirely within the Windsor planning areas outlined by this red rectangle. So this area is governed by the Windsor Municipal Planning Strategy and the Land Use Bylaw. So once again, our discussion will be limited to the rectangle area tonight. And this map shows the current generalized future land use map, which indicates the front portion of the subject properties along the Wentworth Road are designated commercial, and the rear portion is designated residential. And the surrounding properties are designated residential, joint industrial, commercial, and community use. And this map shows the current zoning of the Windsor Land Use Bylaw, which indicates that the front portion of the subject lots along the Wentworth Road are zoned Wentworth Road Commercial, and the rear portion is zoned Agriculture, and the subject lot fronting the co-drive is zoned 2-unit residential. The subject lots are also in the Wentworth Road Gateway District, which is indicated by the hatch overlay on the map. I will go into more details about the background of this district in my next slide, but essentially you can see that most of the properties along the Wentworth Road are within this district as well. So according to the Windsor Municipal Planning Strategy, the Wentworth Road Gateway District was created to recognize Wentworth Road as a gateway to Windsor. And the objectives of the Wentworth Road Gateway District is to identify Wentworth Road as an important entrance route into Windsor for pedestrians and cyclists as well as for vehicles, and promote a sense of welcome and arrival, and assist in visitor orientation and direction into downtown Windsor. In terms of the proposal tonight, This is to rezone the property PID number 451903A6 to Wentworth Road Commercial, and also to 2-unit residential at the rear of the commercial development, as indicated by the map on this slide. And this slide shows the proposed Windsor generalized future land use map. And this slide shows the proposed map change to the Wentworth Road Gateway District. The proposal is to amend the Wentworth Road Gateway District boundary to align with the proposed commercial development area, as indicated by the arrow. This is a photo of the subject lot taken from the Wentworth Road. And here is another picture that is taken on the subject lot from Code Drive, which shows that the lots are largely undeveloped. So the Windsor Municipal Planning Strategy established policy to consider this application tonight, specifically for the redesignation policy 8.6.7 enables council to consider that with the exception of the joint industrial park lands within the Wentworth Road Gateway District shall be designated commercial under generalized future land use map. And also in terms of the rezoning request, policy 8.6.14 enables council to consider rezoning land within the Wentworth Road Gateway District to the Wentworth Road Commercial Zone, subject to the provisions of policy 8.6.16. And also policy 8.6.15 enables council to consider proposal for large format retail store exceeding 50,000 square feet in commercial floor area by development agreement. And policy 6.0.10 enables council to consider to permit lands zoned agriculture to be considered for other uses by amendment to the land use bylaw, subject to the policy 16.3.1, which is the general criteria for amendments to the land use bylaw. So this application will follow the process on the slide here, where we are holding a public information meeting tonight. We will then review as staff and create a recommendation report that will come to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee next meeting. And then the advisory committee will make their recommendation on that night. And that will go to council for first reading. Council will then schedule a public hearing and hold second reading, which will be the final decision on this matter. If the application was approved by the council, the notice of approval will be placed in the paper, and that would outline the 14-day appeal period to the Nova Scotia Utility and the Review Board. And that brings my presentation to the end. If you have any questions or feedback, you are welcome to reach me through email or by telephone. We just request those be submitted before noon on March 19th. And again, I can be reached through phone at 902-798-8391, extension number 110, or by email at whong@westhands.ca. And with that, thank you everyone for listening. And now I will pass it over to you, Chair, with the understanding that the applicant also wishes to present. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hong. Very detailed and informative presentation on a very important piece of property within the Windsor West Hants area. So thank you for that. I would now ask that Crystal Fuller, representing the property owner and developer, please feel free to come forward there, Ms. Fuller, and over to you, Crystal.
Thanks, Will. That was a really helpful presentation of policy. So I have a little bit in policy here, so I'm going to just skip by those slides because Will did such a good job on them. Just going to make my presentation big here. So good evening to everyone. Will said my name's Crystal Fuller and I'm with Brighter Community Planning, and I work for JD Irving on this application. I'm a professional planner here in Windsor. I'd like to introduce Michael Sims, who's here from JD Irving tonight. And he told me his title 3 times, and I'm so going to get it wrong, but it's a head honcho of something. It's a vice president of retail. And
you got it right.
I got it.
Yeah.
I prefer head honcho though.
Yeah.
It's easier to remember. So Michael flew in tonight to hear the comments or drove in tonight to hear the comments and to be here for this meeting. Because it's a important piece of land in their portfolio. So I'm going to give you an overview of this, and it's going to be less technical, and it's going to tell the story of what we're trying to do here. This piece of land is obviously in a great location, but it needs a variety of cleanups from a planning perspective. There's little bits that are in a zone that's not kind of conducive. It has an orphaned piece of agricultural land. There's a number of small things. So it's got a whole bunch of points that Will have went through really well. But the big picture is that this is going to be a retail development site. It's going to for sure house the new Kent store, and that's been already approved by the municipality. And JD Irving is looking to bring other tenants into this location, and I can't announce, obviously not my place to announce, but there's no detail on that tonight. So we're setting the stage so that they can go out and do that attraction. So this is the land. I'm not going to say the PID numbers. And here's what they're trying to do. So right now, the Kent store has been approved through something called a site plan approval. And that was done not just a few months ago. They will be seeking building and development permits, so that the hope is for them to get into the ground in late April of this year. An aggressive timeline, but really important so that we don't have to go too far to go shopping this next Christmas. So the Kent store is going to be in this location. So if you're coming down Wentworth from downtown, it's the first piece of land of this parcel. Okay. So then there's commercial for planned on the rest of it. Behind the commercial, there may be some future residential development. That we're not talking about that at all. There's no details on that. If they decide to go forward to that will be by separate process. So we're only talking tonight about the commercial components, and we're doing some cleanup so that the rear part can eventually be developed for residential. We did all the cleanup inside the West Hands plan area. The councillors, the previous council did that cleanup. So we did a bunch of zone changes and cleanup on the West Hands side. Now we're just doing the cleanup on the Windsor side. So this is just a different view so that you can give I'm going to be sort of giving you different views of the property. So this is the parcel that we're talking about that's going to house the residential. So it's behind the gas station, sort of going halfway up the hill, right sort of across from where the superstore hits out onto Cole Drive. So that's the area where the commercial will be. So it's going to involve potentially at least one large commercial building with the new Kent store, and then maybe another larger format building. We can't confirm what the size of that will be because that will be based on what the tenant needs. So when they have somebody signing their papers, then the building will be designed to meet the needs of that particular retail operator. So it could be over 50,000 square feet. It could be under. The reason for the development agreement is that we want to get the development rights in place so that when they get the tenant in there, or the whoever's going to own that property, however they're going to do tenure, we don't have to then apply for a development agreement potentially and wait 6 to 8 months to get that done. Let's get it done now, get the regulations set out, and then we're good to go regardless. So that's why the development agreement is going. It also could have a variety of small commercial buildings, and there's also a fair bit of green space. That's important. And I can't help but look at Councillor Ivy when I say this, for stormwater purposes. So we recognize that this is an important consideration on the site, and we'll talk more about that. So in terms of vehicular movement, the other thing to understand is there's going to be 2 accesses onto Wentworth, at least that's what is proposed, and 2 accesses over into Cole. The Cole accesses are a little bit more challenging because we have to cross municipal lands to get there. The municipality has a stormwater management system that goes down there along Cole Drive. So we're in discussions with the municipality about how that could look and to ensure the integrity of the way of the stormwater management system. So this development agreement anticipates those 2 connections off Cole. There has been a traffic study. It has been provided to the municipality that talks about traffic in this area. In terms of parking, they only have to provide 1 parking space for every 300 square feet. Based on the estimates of the square footage of the commercial buildings, they're providing a much higher level of parking. So 1 space for every 185 square feet. Again, that number will have a little give because if the buildings get bigger, they might, that 1 per 185 might go down to 180 or 100 or 190 or 200. But they like generally to have a lot of parking in these spaces. So parking is not something that the developer is at all skimping on. As a matter of fact, they want more than what the municipality would normally require. And of course, it'll have accessible parking spaces. It's also important to note that there's a good deal of landscaping islands in this plan, recognizing, as Will talked about, that Wentworth is designed to be this really attractive entrance into the old town downtown. And so there was a lot of attention to played with how that was laid out and how the end of the building, and this is the Kent building right here, what I'm talking about, kind of facing the street, how to make that as attractive as possible. So again, this has already been approved, but there was a good deal of consideration by Kent to sort of up their game here. So, you know, sort of fencing and landscaping, those sorts of things. So stormwater management. So like always in stormwater management, you need to make sure that the balance, it's a balanced site. So you cannot make the stormwater situation any worse. And so you have to make sure that the water that goes off your site after the site's been developed is the same as what it would be before the site was developed. And this does have a slope on it. There is water that's coming down there. So it's going to involve on-site stormwater management ponds. And I mentioned earlier, there's a fair bit of green space here. And that was purposely done so that stormwater can be better managed, because the more green space you leave, the earth takes care of itself if you let it. So the green space allows for more permeable spaces and allows water to sink into the ground. If you pave everything, then you have to have more built stormwater infrastructure. So stormwater is something that the municipality is concerned about, and we will work with them to get a plan in place for stormwater that meets the balancing and makes the situation, it keeps it at least the same, if not improves the situation. And I'm sure there'll be questions about that when the time comes. So it's a fairly big site. Will's gone through a lot of this. I think everybody who lives around here knows it's where you go if you need your groceries and you need to get gas, or if you're going to the exhibition and your kids in 4-H. So it's a really great location for this type of use, because it's also right next to the highway, as we all know. And there's been a good deal of development in that area. The designation and zoning, Will has done a good job, as I've said, of that. So I'm not going to go into length about it, except to mention this agricultural piece. as a daughter of a farmer, I'm always deeply concerned when we lose agricultural land. It's also important to note that this green slice is orphaned and surrounded by apartments, gas stations, superstore, the exhibition grounds across the way, the hospital, so this agricultural land is not something that probably, it's a holdover from a zoning perspective, I think, of a different time. And especially since the front part is designed to accommodate larger scale commercial and residential potentially. This is probably not where a farmer wants to be throwing manure in the spring or trying to get the crops off in the fall or put cows. So probably an important note about that piece. So here's a few renderings just to give you a sense of what it's going to look like. This is the Kent store we were talking about. This is Wentworth. This is the potential large format retail to the rear. And then these other buildings are just placeholders so that in these sorts of developments, often you have a restaurant or you'll have a standalone retail operation or you'll have a service or a couple of a small little strip mall type thing like we have down where the Dairy Queen went in, something like that. So all of these are not written in stone, but they're certainly placeholders. This also shows the anticipated and hoped for driveways to Cool Drive. So, if any of us were going in here, we'd probably turn in here and then want to go out and catch the lights. So this is an important connection for Irving. And that's the site plan approved in December 2024. So again, that's the Kent and the other stores. And then you can see the crossing sort of over back here. And that's the future residential to the rear that we talked about. So there were a number of requests we made. The planners will sort out that technical component of it. And so the municipalities grouped those requests in 3 different applications, which is fine with Irving. And I mentioned that the development agreement is only going in place because we are unable to confirm what the size of that building is going to be, that other large format building. The easements are really important. We've talked about that, the boundary change. And again, this portion of the agricultural land we're seeking to rezone to residential. We rezoned this to residential a year and a half ago. So the anticipated future residential will be on these in this area and on this bit here within the West Hands Plan area. So in essence, Irving sees this as a really important contribution to this community. Commercial is the foundation of any municipal tax base, and they are doing a lot to make sure that this integrates well into what is an important entrance into the historical downtown of Hansport, I live in Hansport, into Windsor, and also address probably the critical issue here of stormwater management. And I met 3 hours with the engineer today to understand how that's going to work and and there's been a great deal of thought by the engineering team and we'll work with the municipality to ensure that those stormwater plans will meet the municipal requirements. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Crystal Fuller with Brighter Community Planning for, again, another informative and detailed presentation on the proposal for this property on Wentworth Road. Certainly very helpful at an initial planning and information meeting to have so much information shared on behalf of the proponents. So that's that part. The next thing that we'll look for here as part of the formal part of the process here is any questions or comments from the public is where I'll start with. Is there anybody here that wishes to ask questions of the planners and or of the planning consultants or the proponent themselves? Please feel free to come forward to the mic. It's already on with the red light, lets you know that you can. And I'm going to ask that as you approach, if you would just give us your name. Can you just say that again? Because now you're at the mic. It's just for the record, so we know who you.
Beth McCarthy, 82 Edward Drive in the Crossing.
Thank you, Beth.
I'm curious about a couple of variables. One is because I back onto this whole development, and I've already felt some issue with the amount of ambient light that we receive from the Super 8 Motel and all the other developments. And I'm afraid it's going to be worse when all this is built, unless they give consideration to controlling the light. So that's one question. The other question has to do with the residential area, and I don't think you're ready to discuss that. So that's.
Thank you very much, Beth. So one is on the ambient light and two is residential, which I don't. So yeah, feel free, Crystal, if you're wanting to field that, I'll gladly, as they go to the development itself.
So thank you for that. Yeah, ensuring that light pollution is not is minimized to the greatest extent possible. We all like lights, but we don't want it shining in our house at 2:00 in the morning. Yes. So in these kind of larger developments, oftentimes, if it's by development agreement, there can be something that the municipality puts in the development agreement that requires lighting, either a lighting plan. And there's often a clause that says something like light will be directed away from adjacent residential. So if we do it by development agreement, the municipality can control that. Not to give you more regulations to put in place, but it's kind of a common regulation. So it wouldn't at all be surprising. And I think Irving would be very open and adherent to that. But regardless, the proponent has no interest in that either. And so they often do something called a display plan, a lighting display plan, to ensure that lighting is appropriately kept to a minimum on the adjacents. So that's pretty standard in these large scale commercials, but there will be more light because there's going to be lights in the parking area and those sort of things, but it's attempted to be minimized.
Thank you very much, Crystal. I think important. And thank you for the identification on the document. Thank you, Ms. McCarthy. Does that answer your question? Are you good at the present time? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your question. Anybody else here in the public that wishes to ask a question? I
should just say one more thing.
Can we have you come to the mic there, please, Mr. Sim, just so we're all recorded for the record. I'll have you say your name.
Yeah, Mike Sims, sorry. So yeah, we will make every attempt to make sure that the light is directed away from any of the residences, but we also are very conscious about the cost of electricity today. And so many of our lights are turned off at night. We have a minimal amount at night. Another common occurrence or question we get is about noise. Again, we're very sensitive. Many of our stores are in residential areas, and so we try to be very sensitive to the hours that we operate, the noise that we're creating. And so I assure you, we will be very sensitive to those things for all the residents. This is a very important development for us. We have a number of areas that we are considering going, and this is top of our list, just because of the, so much work going on here in the community, so many good things going on. So yeah, we're quite excited about getting here.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Sims. Appreciate the information. Good. Thank you there, Ms. McCarthy, as well for the question. So that's the public, I think, that we have at present. Anybody here from PAC Hacker Council that has any questions or concerns or comments they wish to raise with anybody from planning or no? Looks like we're good. So just before I close, I want to thank Mr. Michael Sims, VP at Retail for JD Irving, for joining us. I would have announced that at the front, so it's at the back, but I remember my father telling me years ago that at the end is a place of respect. And so thank you, though, truly for joining us and being here to help with answering the questions. Very helpful. So we've had a wonderful presentation here from the planners and from the consultants on behalf of the proponent for the property. I want to thank everybody for joining us here and online. If you're watching online, we are not able to respond to any comments or questions that you may have there because we're busy conducting the meeting here at hand. So with that, I'm going to close by just advising and restating that comments or questions on this application will be received by Mr. William Hong until noon on March 19th of 2025. His email address is whong@westhants.ca, or his telephone number is 902-798-8391, extension 110. General inquiries can be sent to planning@westhants.ca, and the appropriate staff member will respond. The contact information that we just provided is also on the region's website, or you can maybe scroll back about 5 or 10 minutes in the proposed, and you'll catch it at the end of each person's who spoke. Thank you all very much. And with that, we'll call this meeting adjourned and closed for the evening.